In today's episode, I talk with Coach Smee of the University of Charleston men's team. If you like our interviews, I would truly appreciate it if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're more of a podcast person, subscribe on your favorite platform, as we are on Apple, Google, Spotify, and more. And don't forget to follow us on all the social media channels at discover_CS. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Daniel Smee at the University of Charleston in West Virginia. Welcome, Coach.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You guys are having another great season over there. I used to go to there used to be a tournament called the Sternwheeler in Charleston when I was like 12 years old that we would go to every year. So that's that. I haven't been to Charleston in 30 plus years, but I'm sure it's changed a little bit since then.
We had a thing this summer, the Sternwheel Regatta,
Yeah.
like the big thing, and apparently it was the first time it had been here in 20 to 25 years.
Oh
So
wow. Okay. Well,
similar to what you're talking about, yeah.
it must be crazy. Um, Well, let's talk a little bit about your recruiting process. We'll start there. But when do you usually start looking for players, really start watching them, getting them on your radar, and sorting out your recruiting classes?
Yeah, I think we're a little bit different to a lot of other programs. Just we have a large squad of student athletes. I'm in my sixth season now, and we've sort of averaged probably around 60. This year we have 54, which is I think the lowest it's been since I've been here in those six seasons I mentioned. So for us, honestly, we don't start the process till fairly late. For example, obviously we're looking for 2023s right now, which is the next class, and we probably won't even really do too much with 2024s until next year. Now we do have camps and we do invite 24s, 25s, and 26 high school age kids to come to those camps, and it's always nice to get on our radar and for us to know who you are ahead of time. And obviously, if you're a good player, we think you're a good person, and you might be a good fit, we'll keep in contact with you over the years prior to camp or after camp. Sorry. But for us, it's mainly just 1 year in advance, just because of the large roster size and with everything that goes on with the transfer portal now, and how easy it is for student athletes to transfer. We just never know how many guys we're going to need. Like sometimes for our roster, we might expect to need 10 new players next year. And then you have some transfers, some guys might just go and do school instead of playing soccer. So it might end up being 20. So I do think we're a little bit unique in that regard.
So that must mean you guys run kind of a development squad as well, then?
Yes, yes. So two head coaches previous to me created that. I think he was probably I think he was the first one to do it, and I know it's a lot more prevalent within Division Two in particular right now on the men's side. It's coming into the women's side as well. I think a little bit more as well. But Chris Grassi, who's now the head coach at Marshall University on the men's side, he was the one I think who sort of pioneered it back in 2013, 2014. And we've had one here at UC ever since. So yeah, we run a first team and a development team. Yeah.
Okay. Well, looking at your roster, you kind of skew heavily internationally. So how are you finding players there? How does that work with your overall recruiting methodology? And are you going overseas to see kids? Or are you kind of just going through video? How does that work?
A bit of both. We're doing both, Matt. To be honest, we video nowadays with technology. Every email you get for a potential student athlete has a video on it, which is great. Obviously, nice to see someone in that first contact. It's always nice to take a look at that video immediately and see where you obviously feel like they might fall within the roster. When it comes to internationals, yes, we do travel internationally to go and recruit. A lot of international companies now have showcase events, do showcase games, things like that, like they do here in the United States. So we'll go to those if we feel like it's a company that can provide student athletes for us, or maybe in the past they've provided a student athlete that's worked out for us. We'll go back. Sometimes we'll go abroad just to look at a specific player. Maybe you see them in their sort of home environment, playing for their team that they're playing for, just like you would, just like we do as well within the United States.
Now, one question that I get fairly often, and I think, again, I think usually more prevalent on the guys side, but is, aren't aren't there, enough good soccer players in America? Why does it seem that a lot of college, especially D2 NAIA, go overseas to pull players? So, and it's kind of a loaded question, but it's one I think parents always ask, and I
Yeah,
have my answer, as a former D2 coach, but I'd love to hear where you're coming from.
I have an opinion on that, Matt. First, what I would say is for us, since I've been at this program, it's been heavy international. So we were so successful before I came. Doesn't make sense for me to then come in and try and just change everything.
Sure.
Um, we have, since I became the head coach, tried to recruit a lot more regionally. So we do our best to at least let the West Virginia kids know and the local Ohio kids, Kentucky kids, like if we feel like they're a good player, that this is a potential option for them. But we also encourage them to go and look elsewhere. If you want to move out of state, then just know, go and look out of state. And if you want to come back to us, we'll be here waiting. We don't have a maximum cap on the amount of student athletes we can have. So if someone last minute is a local kid and we really like them as a person and think they might help us, and they don't have any other options, we'll take them. Like we are happy to provide that opportunity. But again, we only like to do that for local kids and give that opportunity to the West Virginia kids if we can. My theory on the main question you asked there, Matt, is what I've learned. And again, I was a youth soccer coach here in the States before I became a college coach, or while I was doing collegiate coaching a few years ago. The majority of high end US based soccer players grow up their whole life saying, I want to play Division One soccer. And then it gets to a point towards the end of their high school years where maybe they have those options to play Division One, but more often than not, they don't. Obviously, because we know how difficult it is to get into a top program. And the majority of young men, at least at that stage of their career, I have found would rather go to a Division One school and not play soccer than go to a Division Two school or a Division Three school or a junior college and play soccer. So, perfect example. 5 or 6 years ago, I had the 2001 boys team who were going into their senior year here in West Virginia, and there was probably 16, 17 young men on that team, and they were all good players. They were obviously, you see some youth teams where maybe you've got 8, 9, and then you've got 8 or 9 who are not going to play in college. We had probably 16 or 17 that could play in college somewhere. And for 2 years prior to them graduating high school, I said to them, listen, guys, you need to make a decision because you can all play. The best player might be able to go to a big Division One, and be a squad player. Might be able to go to a mid-level Division One and play every week. You could go to UC and be a squad player and get on the pitch occasionally and play. Or you can go to West Virginia University and not be a student athlete and just enjoy life. That player chose to go to West Virginia University and enjoy his collegiate experience, which is fine. Like, that's his decision. And then we've got guys at the other end, or maybe we had 2 or 3 guys that I thought were good enough to play at that level. We probably had 12, 13, 14 that were good enough to play at D3, whatever, mid-level D2. And I think 2 or 3 of that group of 16 or 17 lads are playing collegiate soccer now. One of them's at a Division 3 school and he's the best player, gets all region awards and is doing great and loves it. One of them went to Concord University here in West Virginia, which is a low-level Division 2, and he has been playing for the last 2, 3 years. The rest of them chose to go to a different school, usually a bigger school, and just enjoy it. So my theory is there is options out there. There is opportunities to play, but the reality of the level needs to be either explained to the young PSAs, or they need to kind of figure it out themselves. Maybe I'm not good enough to play at a Wake Forest, a Clemson, whatever it is. Maybe I can go and play, but it has to be at a smaller school in a different location.
Yeah. No, makes sense, and I've seen that 100 times as well through the years. So no, that makes sense.
Probably more than 100, I would say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, you mentioned camps earlier, so are camps a big part of your recruiting process for the local kids, or do you guys work other camps? How does that kind of fit in?
Yeah, which we try to do 2 ID camps a year, so one in the fall, one in the spring, and from a domestic um, PSA standpoint, those are very important. We try to get out to showcases and events in the spring semester within the US. A lot of those events in the fall are kind of during our season. And touch wood, I'm going to touch wood here because hopefully we do it again. But usually we're playing all the way up until December,
Right.
or we have been since I've been here. And a lot of those events are in sort of November, late October, early December. And if we're still playing and trying to focus on trying to win a national championship or win a game or whatever it is, difficult for us to get out and about. And it's the same, we don't go internationally at that time because we're focusing on the season. So camps are very important for us, as they are for a lot of programs. We try to keep the cost as low as we can because for us, it's not a huge cost building measure. I don't think we've done an ID camp since I've been here that's had more than 30 kids in it, which is good because if you are a person at the camp, by the end of the day, every coach, we've got 6 coaches this year, all 6 coaches are going to know your name. They're going to know where you're from. All 6 coaches are going to know where you're from and what your background is, as opposed to going to one of those huge camps with 150, 200 kids and where you're just going to get lost in the crowd, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Well, you mentioned tournaments. Are there kind of, obviously you're not hitting them in the fall, but what are some of the maybe winter or spring tournaments that are, must go to on your list?
We're always heading. We don't go too far west. I'll say that we're spending a lot of time in this region, Maryland, Virginia, heading over that way. There's usually a regional tournaments here for clubs that are. This past year it was hosted here in Charleston, which was great for us because we were able to get 3 coaches there. But mostly the major tournaments here in the sort of northeast area are the ones that we target. Again, just based on experience, a kid from California, Texas, while they may be very good soccer players, difficult to convince them to come to a small private Division II school in West Virginia. Don't want to be that far away from home. Probably have a similar option closer to home out there on the West Coast or whatever it is. So usually we're spending time here in the northeast area at those showcases.
Okay.
The good thing for us as well is we have, like I said, we have 6 coaches. I think I'm the only coach on staff that doesn't coach a youth soccer team as well. So in the spring semester, when these youth soccer tournaments are going on the weekends, we typically have representation there who are probably coaching their own team, and then they have time in between games to get out and about and take a look.
No, that's helpful. Um, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask the question most parents want to know, and that's about money, right? So with you bringing in, a 60-man roster and the limits on scholarships, kind of can you just, and I'm not holding you to hard numbers here, but just kind of give me a broad sense of what an average student athlete coming into Charleston's going to be looking at from a cost and financial aid perspective.
Yeah, obviously it's a really important question. For a lot of people, it's the most important question, right? So for us, as I said, we're a small private Division II school. We run about 40,000 annually in cost for tuition, room, and board. However, what's great here is every student gets an academic scholarship. So even if you have a 2.0 GPA out of a 4.0, you're going to get 4 or 5,000 in academic scholarship, which is obviously not a huge number, but it's going to help. If you have a 4.0, those academic scholarships run all the way up to 20,000. So the 4.0 student, from a domestic standpoint, is going to get almost 50% of their tuition room and board costs covered through an academic scholarship with us. And then obviously, again, if you're a domestic student, you're going to be looking at FAFSA and some other potential federal aid that could help you. Most of our American guys, if I was to pick a number of the cost that they're paying each year, I would be surprised if it's anywhere more than 10,000 from an average, just because of the academic scholarships, as I mentioned, and then obviously the grants and the aid that they can get through the government.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the school itself. You mentioned, you're a private school there in Charleston, West Virginia. So what are some of the awesome things about your school that, I might not find out just by clicking around the website?
I think obviously with location is not what we tell to PSAs is obviously we're not a New York City, we're not a Miami, we're not even a Charlotte, North Carolina when it comes to size of city, but we are still the capital here of West Virginia. So we have about 50,000 people in Charleston and the surrounding area. As you know, as most people know, West Virginia is a very big outdoor state. So lots of things to do outside, hiking, walking, whitewater rafting, all of these things. In Charleston, you kind of have everything that you need from a social standpoint: bars, restaurants, cinemas, um, axe throwing, all of these things. So you're not going sort of into the middle of nowhere, I would call it, into some of these really small schools that you've got an hour before you're within civilization. It feels like sometimes. So from a location standpoint, we're pretty good. I think it could be a lot worse. It could obviously depend on what you're looking for. It could be a lot better as well. When it comes to the university, we have 2,500 students, but only about 750 of those are on campus. Um, and of those 750, there's about 650 that are student athletes. We have 20 athletic programs here at UC, and 95% of the population on campus are going to be fellow student athletes. So you've got people from all over the world, tennis, um, ourselves, women's soccer, tennis, and some other sports have a lot of track, cross country and track have a lot of international students as well. So for our international students, it's good for them because they know there's probably going to be someone from their home country somewhere here on campus. And then from a domestic student standpoint, same thing. Most states in this country are represented here on campus at UC within the student athlete population. So I like that from a diversity standpoint. You've got people from sort of all over the place. Are just bringing their different cultures and things like that to campus here. I really like that. And then the last thing is obviously the athletics programs. Like I said, we have 20 programs here, and the majority of those are very successful in the sport that they compete in. We have a lot of conference championship winners, conference tournament winners, and some regional representation and national representation, not just in our program, but in a whole bunch of other programs as well.
Awesome. Well, on the flip side of things, from an academic standpoint, how do your student athletes balance their studies and sport commitments, and what kind of support mechanisms does the school provide to help them with that?
It's a great question, and something else I think that we do really well here, and I probably should have mentioned it in the previous question. Very small teacher to student ratio. I think it's about 1 to 12, 1 to 13, some classes up to maybe 15, 16. But you've obviously, the good thing about that is you're building that personal relationship with the teacher. It was very good for me when I was a student. I went to West Virginia Wesleyan College, which is another school here in our conference, similar size and similar sort of style of college to UC. And it was great for me to, especially as an international, build that relationship with the teacher, learn the ropes a little bit, be able to ask questions directly, be able to go and see that teacher in the office during office hours. And if you have any questions, ask them. I do think at small private schools, if you just do those things, do your homework on time, go to class and show an effort in class, I think you're going to get a C. I think you're going to pass the class because the teacher appreciates the work that you put in and they'll do their best to help you. And every class that we have here at UC, there's a free tutor available. So anyone who's really struggling and needs the class for their major or whatever can sign up with a tutor once or twice a week and get themselves in there for any help. And again, that's all free. That's all part of the process. And I think that's a great benefit that we have being such a small private school, like I say.
That's awesome. Can you just real quick walk me through what a quote unquote typical week looks like during the season for your players in terms of when they're eating, practice, games? I know there's no such thing as an average week, but the best of your ability, just to give folks an idea.
Yeah. So most of our games are first team games are Wednesdays and Sundays. That's decided by the conference every year. We do have the option to change those days, but most of the time we're keeping them on Wednesdays and Sundays. Our development team plays on a Friday evening usually. We like to give that sort of day gap in between each game so we can prepare properly before each one and then sort of review after each one and not have a rush to try and get to the next game. So first team Wednesday, Sunday, development team Friday, with one game per week for that group. If we're just talking about the first team typical schedule, we'll go Sunday's obviously a game, as I said. Monday, there'll be a sort of light session, a recovery session. Tuesday, is a pre-game session. Wednesday we play. Thursday is typically an off day. Friday and Saturday we're practicing again. During the week, our practices are in the afternoons. Our university has the window between 2 and 6 where there are no classes, and all athletic teams are sort of encouraged to practice in between those hours. So our first team usually goes 2 to 4. Our development team usually goes 4 to 6. And classes are usually before that window, and some are after. So you usually having class anywhere between 8 and 2. Lunch whenever you want, obviously between that, breakfast whenever you want in the morning, practice in the afternoon there after those classes, and dinner afterwards, and then you might have an evening class as well at some point. We usually train on a Saturday morning, and we like the guys, and to be honest, the staff like to have our Saturday afternoons to kind of relax and have some downtime. So Saturdays we'll get out there early, sort of 9 and 10:30, get our sessions done and out of the way, and then we're looking towards that Sunday game at that point.
All right, that makes sense. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the team and the soccer side of things. You mentioned your staff. Can you give me a little bit more about how big they are, who does what, kind of the roles they play, etc.?
Yeah, so we usually have 5 members of staff. This year we've got 6 because we have a student assistant that's doing a great job in helping us out. So it's myself as the head coach, obviously from the UK. Our full-time assistant coach is from Virginia Beach, American. Played at Marshall University and then went on to play professionally in the United States and in the Netherlands. We have 2 graduate assistants who study a master's and then help us as well as an assistant coach. One is from Scotland and one is from Argentina. The Argentinian there is our goalkeeper coach. We also have a part-time coach from the UK as well, from London, who was the graduate assistant last year and just graduated. We all kind of share roles. We try to all be at every training session that we can. Myself included, I'm at every development team training session. The rest of the staff are at every first team session. And same for the games. We try and chip in. We try and share the load as much as we can, but we all chip in with all of that. Travis, our assistant coach, full-time assistant coach, American, who I mentioned, is our recruiting coordinator. So he kind of is in charge of our recruiting document, list of potential student athletes. Obviously, it's more of a spreadsheet where we have a star rating on there, a graduation year, position, video, and it's just one database where we all get to take a look. Travis is in charge of keeping that together, and we actually have a recruiting meeting in a couple of hours just to kind of review and see where we are. We try and do that every couple of weeks. But a great staff, to be honest, Matt. Love it. I think myself, Travis, and Gary, 3 of the coaches have been together now for, this is our 3rd season. I think we kind of probably see too much of each other and know how each other work too much a little bit. But great staff, and certainly helps us with everything that we need to do on the week to week.
No, that's great. It's a benefit. A lot of D2 schools don't get that much staffing help, so you're in a good spot there. I know I didn't when I was coaching D2.
Yeah, I know all about that. This is my 4th Division 2 coaching job, and it's the first one that we've had more than 2 members of staff.
No, it's amazing. Well,
I said it's a blessing.
Can you give me just a quick, and it's kind of a general question, but I always like to ask it just because folks want to know. Can you just give me an idea of your kind of your style of coaching, team style of play, and just that overall culture of the team?
Yeah, from my standpoint as an individual, I'm still quite young. I like to think I'm only 32. I still played until fairly recently at a very average level, but I like to feel like, because I'm so similar in age to a lot of our, I'm getting further away obviously, but I'm quite close in age to a lot of the student athletes. I feel like I have a good personal relationship with a lot of them. I try to get to know every one of them from a personal standpoint, because I do think that's so important. When it comes to playing style, we are just typically it's the way it's been since I've arrived. We're sort of a possession oriented team. We typically, and I don't think this is big-headed to say, we typically have better players than the teams we're playing against because of all the benefits we've mentioned. Obviously, scholarship dollars are a huge part of that. We're very well funded and we've had a lot of success, so we get good players because of that. And obviously, when you have better players, typically you're going to have more of the ball in the game. So we talk about trying to dominate and control the game in possession as much as we can, all of the time. try to say that it is okay to not have possession. I know a lot of teams that have 60-70% possession, when they lose it, they kind of panic that we got to get it back immediately. It is nice to do that, but sometimes it's okay as long as you're organised out of possession. And we like to be a team in the third part of the game that are really good in transition moments. So when that possession turns over, we like to be really dangerous in the opportunity to go and score if we can. And on the flip side, if we lose it, we do try and be one of those teams that you hear about a lot on the modern side who try and win that ball back in the next few seconds. And of course, you can't do that every time, but that's what we try to do at least.
Okay. Well, we've gone over a ton of stuff and gotten a great insight into your program. I always like to end these the same way, and that's what didn't we talk about? What did we miss? Is there anything you want to tell us more about the school, the program, the team, or anything about the recruiting process in general? Now's the time.
Yeah, well, I would say, Matt, is in relation to the recruiting process, always available via email. If you want to go on our website, it's ucgoldeneagles.com. Obviously, visit the men's soccer page. Myself, Travis, and Gary's email addresses are all on there. If you are a potential student athlete that would be interested, or at least interested in looking to potentially join us here at UC, feel free to send us an email. We'll certainly read that email and let you know our thoughts. We do have a camp coming up at the end of this month. All that information is available on social media and online as well. So we, as you've mentioned, Matt, we kind of have student athletes from everywhere. So whoever's listening to this, wherever you are in the world, really, there could be a potential opportunity to join us. And I do think, as I said, the healthy academic packages that we can offer at UC are very appealing to a lot of potential student athletes, as well as the scholarship.
We are excited to be part of Podcast Row at the 2023 United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia from January 11th to the 15th. The convention is the ultimate event for soccer coaches, administrators, and fans of the beautiful game. Ignite your passion through captivating presentations, on-field demonstrations, exhibits, and networking events for any coach. Whether you are attending alone or bringing the whole coaching staff, there's no better place for soccer coaches to learn, network, and experience the latest trends in soccer education. Visit www.unitedsoccercoachesconvention.org to register. Come join us as we celebrate our passion for the beautiful game.